sure that we know who's on the line today.
Oh. Erica, did I stop sharing?
You did.
I was trying to admit multiple people and I stopped sharing. There it is. Kim, do you have control back? Okay, so you're admitting people.
Excellent. And then Air District team, just briefly, I don't know if you are waiting for Ryan. I don't see him yet, but I want to make sure he has a chance to log on if he's going to make it on today.
He's on his way.
Awesome, we'll wait. For those of you just joining us, we will start in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience.
Está bien, gracias.
Where's Jamie?
I'm here.
Hey, Jamie, do you see my lovely little dog?
I do. Who is that?
This is Tasha, or as I lovingly call her, Tasha Fierce, the most spoiled dog in the tower.
Oh my goodness. She and my Edie could be little sisters. They are the same color.
Yeah, she now has an addiction to homemade tortillas.
Don't blame her.
I was gonna say, you know what?
Oh.
That may be the best thing I've heard all day.
I was making,
I think
I did breakfast for dinner tonight, and I'm warming up some homemades that I made and stuff, and all I hear is the crying. So guess who had to have a scrambled egg and a tortilla?
I like that she's spoiled. I fully approve. I ran home.
If you want to hear something about spoiled dogs, I threw my dog an adoption day birthday yesterday.
What did it entail, Justin?
It entailed him unwrapping presents and a specially made birthday cake for the dog.
Oh, please. I had a 3-course sit-down lunch for 20 people and 16 dogs, a full-service bar, musicians, photographers, cake towers, and swag bags for my beloved Loki's birthday.
You have me beat.
Ryan has made it. Otherwise, Lisa, Justin, and I will talk about dogs for the next hour, which I know most of you don't want to happen. So we'll turn it over.
Oh, trust me, if you want to go to my dog's birthday party, because I'm thinking about actually giving Tasha a puppy quinceañera party.
Well, I think, Lisa, we will require photos to be shared at the very least.
Oh,
so please make a note of that.
I literally have photos in a DVD that was made of Loki's birthday party.
Oh, I think that's a future CSC meeting agenda item for sure.
I am the old little crazy Mexican lady who loves her chihuahuas. Huh, Tasha? Okay. Well, I'm gonna mute me now so I can talk to her real quick. So,
well, we're gonna start our meeting. So perfect timing. Good to see you as always. And for those of you just joining us, welcome to the AB 617 South Central Fresno Community Steering Committee meeting. As you can see, we're talking about dogs today and spoiled pets. So if you have yours, they are always welcome on these calls, especially if they are invisible. We love to see them. My name is Erica Manuel. I'm the CEO of ILG, and we have been working with you all for over a year now on this AB 617 steering committee. I am joined by my colleagues Hannah and Kim, who you should know now as well, very well. Hannah is waving and Kim is waving. You should be able to see them both, and they will be working with us behind the scenes today to help make sure that this meeting goes as smoothly as possible from a technology standpoint. If you have any questions, feel free to chat them or raise your hand, and they will make sure that we get all of these things done. Before we go too far, I know we were waiting for a few people, which I think are on the line, but we always want to make sure that our Spanish-speaking attendees have everything they need. So we want to check in with Mari to make sure that the instructions in Spanish are communicated and that everybody is okay on the Spanish line. Mari, can you make sure and let me know when it's good to go?
Ok, perfecto. Si necesitan la interpretación en español en esta reunión, ahorita lo que está viendo en la pantalla viene siendo, sorry, let me mute my other stuff. Take it down. Ok, para poder poner, está en la pantalla, que usted puede seleccionar el logotipo o uno que parece un globo y dice interpretación. Puede seleccionar ese botón y luego ir al idioma español. Y luego también quiere oprimir el botón que dice Mute Original Audio, que viene siendo silenciar el audio original. Y así no va a escuchar el idioma en inglés. Si tiene alguna pregunta, se puede comunicar conmigo vía chat o nomás diga ahorita si tiene problemas. ¿Alguien necesita ayuda? Si no, vamos a continuar. Oye, también está un número de teléfono en caso de que no puedan asistir ahorita por en línea, por Zoom. Está el número gratuito. Aquí el número es 888-240-3210 y el código de acceso viene siendo el 655-9228 y el signo de número. Gracias. Sí. Okay.
We're all set. Thank you so much. All right, so next on our list, Hannah, we're going to go over the agenda for today's meeting. Hannah, would you please cover the agenda elements?
Kim muted me. She does that to people. She mutes everyone. Good evening, everyone. So today we're going to start with standing updates, something we've heard from you. You would like to hear standing updates at the beginning of the meeting. We will cover standing updates on air monitoring, bus filtration and truck, school filtration and truck rerouting committees. We will then move into updates from Department of Pesticides Resources, followed by the updates on enforcement. We will wrap up this meeting by having a deep dive conversations on annual report that the Air District will be submitting to their governing board and the CARP. Hopefully you all had a chance to review and share some feedback with the Air District. And at the end of the meeting, we're gonna have public comment period. We'll launch a quick survey, quick poll to figure out alternative dates for our November steering committee meeting. And yes, that's our agenda for tonight.
Perfect. And then Kim is going to go over some details related to housekeeping for those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time, or for those of you that don't remember every little detail about Zoom. We just want to remind you of the meeting etiquette for this meeting to make sure that it runs as smoothly as possible when we've got over 50 people or more signed on. So Kim, would you go through the etiquette and housekeeping, please?
Hi, everybody. Sorry for muting you, Hannah. I get a little power hungry. This is not our first Zoom meeting, obviously, but I'm just going to do a quick overview of some items just to remind you. Please make sure your screen name includes your affiliation if you're a resident or a CSC member, and then your first name and last name. That helps us when we're sifting through to get the resident members and get them their stipends. We want to know who's on the line today, so if you're a CARB or an Air District member, please put that as well, or a member of the public. If you're on the phone or unable to change your name, we are happy to step in. Hannah, Erica, and I are all working behind the scenes to make sure that we can see your display names and that all of your organizations are denoted. Please make sure to stay on mute during the meeting. We will unmute you. Please raise your hand if you have a question or you want to chat with somebody, and please feel free to chat me at any time or Hannah, and we will be able to verbally call out your question or answer it in the chat box. And just a reminder that the chat box is not entirely private, so just to keep it nice and respectful. But I'm going to hand this back to Erica now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So formality on this, as you can see, the meeting's being recorded and we're streaming live on Facebook. And then we also have a TV station that runs this on public access at a later date. The meeting is open to the public, but we do ask members of the public to reserve your comments to allow the CSC members the time to deliberate during this meeting. There will be a public comment portion at the end of the meeting, and we will definitely check for public input as well if there is time throughout. And if you're just joining us, there is a translation option for our Spanish-speaking community, and please do take a look at that slide as well to figure out how to sign on to the Spanish language. If we are, as always, really committed to making sure that this is an inclusive process. So we will be stopping the meeting occasionally to make sure that those that are on the Spanish line have the opportunity to weigh in with their questions and comments. And we really appreciate everyone being able to participate in this process. So let's go to roll call. We do know that I think because we've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, we don't need to do a verbal roll call anymore, but we do want to make sure that you are actively renamed with the right name so that we can track your attendance and participation, specifically those of you that are residents participating in our stipend program. So anyone participating in the stipend program, as a reminder, please be in this meeting for 75% of the meeting, and we're going to track your attendance based on when you log into Zoom. And if you are on the phone with more than one person, sometimes groups of you get together and we love that. We do want to give you the chance right now to let us know if there's anybody in a group right now that is in the same room and they want us to track their attendance as a team. And then if there's anybody, Kim, can you tell us if there's anyone on the phone that needs to be renamed? You can call them out now.
Yes, I am seeing just one phone number and it doesn't have a video. It may be attached to somebody else's. The last four digits are 6119. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, it's Hector Lara.
Hi, Hector. Thanks for joining. I'm just going to rename you. And I just want to confirm that Gregory's iPad is Gregory Barfield.
Yes, it is. I just renamed myself.
Oh, excellent.
Thank
you so much.
You guys
we
got
have
the
everybody
hang of
else
this.
identified.
Perfect. And I didn't see anyone that was in a group, but if you are in a group, feel free to unmute yourself now and let us know, and we'll make sure to get everybody that's in your group. I think we've got it. And you can do that at any time. And if we didn't catch you, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure to track you in the attendance log. All right, so as Hannah mentioned, we're going to do some Zoom polling today to figure out when is a good time to have our next meeting for this group, because the current schedule falls on a holiday. So we're going to test out some new technology for you really briefly, and we want to try a really quick poll, and it's a very easy one, but it's a new technology through Zoom that you may have not seen before, so we wanted to try a really easy question for you to see how this shows up. If you don't have access to it or you can't see it, it's okay, it's not the end of the world. But we did want to give you a heads up that we're going to ask you a question about your calendar at the end of the meeting, so we wanted to get you prepped for it early. So when you see the question, just answer it yes or no, and Hannah's going to launch that poll right now, and the question is going to be if you had any coffee today. And this is a heads up question to cue you up for the real question we're going to ask you about your schedule a little bit later in the meeting. So Hannah's going to launch the poll. Hopefully you can all see it.
Erica, before I launch the poll, I just want to give you a quick heads up. The poll is designed so those two questions are together. So our participants will see both questions together. Coffee and the dates question.
Oh, I'm not sure if we're ready for the date question yet. Does it have to be together?
Yes, so let's maybe come back to testing the poll a little later. I'm going to separate those two questions on the fly.
Perfect. Okay, we'll separate them and we'll come back to it. So just heads up, we are going to do a question about your calendars. If you don't have your schedule in front of you for the month of November, if you can grab it sometime in the next 30, 45 minutes, we'd love it, just to make sure that we can get some dates for you for the next meeting, which we need to reschedule.
Can we find out?
So now we're going to...
Excuse me, real quick question. Since you want us to check against our calendar, which is on the iPad that I'm using, what dates are you looking at? I mean, that's helpful for me real quick.
Yeah, it looks like we're looking at the 5th and the 10th. Am I accurate, Hannah?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing. And the time would be this same time, 5:30 to 7:30. Perfect. Thank you, guys. All right, so now we will go to our host welcome with Ryan and our co-host, Kimberly. If you two would like to unmute yourselves and just give your standard welcome for the group.
I don't have a lot to say tonight other than thank you all for being here and appreciate the continued support of the program and the work that we're doing, and look forward to getting everybody's input and providing some updates and continuing to move the measures forward. So thank you so much. And obviously, thank you so much to Kimberly for being volunteering to do this process again. And she always adds a lot to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be co-host again. This is my second time, and I'm just looking forward to all the updates and all the questions that you guys will have once we give all the updates, and just ready to start digging in. I'm ready for this truck rerouting subcommittee update here. So pass it back over to Erica.
Thank you, Kimberly. You were perfect queue up. That's actually next on the agenda. Standing updates are next. And again, Kimberly's our community co-host today, and we love repeat co-hosts. We also love if you've not done it before, we're always happy to accept a new one. Just write your name in the chat if you'd like to also be a community co-host for this meeting in the future. So the standing updates are next on the agenda. And as Kimberly said, we are going to focus on subcommittees and air monitoring for those updates. And we're starting actually with truck rerouting. Then we're going to go to school filtration and buses, and then we're going to cover the air, community air monitoring. So we do have truck rerouting first on the list. And just as a recap for you all, we haven't had a truck rerouting committee since the last CSC meeting because the city has been working on that truck rerouting RFP. And we wanted to focus the subcommittee's time really on providing input to that document as soon as it was ready. That draft RFP was actually sent out via email to this entire group on Monday this week. And so we do, I believe, have someone from the city here to talk briefly about that RFP and the next steps. And just to be clear, the goal for this agenda item right now tonight is not to go over the RFP in detail, but to explain the next steps in the process and then outline some specifics related to the dates, the deadlines, and how best to weigh into the document because you just got it. So I know that Scott Mosier is here on the line. I think he may be the one speaking about this item. But Scott, do you want to give a high-level overview of the RFP as it stands now and the draft that's been shared, and then we can talk a little bit about when that truck rerouting subcommittee meeting will take place.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica, and great to see everyone this afternoon, this evening. So on the city side, we've put together a draft request for proposal, and that basically outlines the general scope of services that a firm or really a team would undertake with the study. So it talks about things ranging from traffic data, evaluating routes, looking at land uses, sensitive uses, schools, city, county, Caltrans jurisdiction, trucks, origins, destinations, all of those different things are part of that RFP. We talk about stakeholders, subcommittee reports, various items like that. But again, it's very important to the city, and I know to this whole steering committee that we have really good input and work collaboratively to shape that effort. So the RFP is out. It's a draft just for review. Next steps will really be to convene the truck rerouting subcommittee, and have some discussion via email in advance, but then have the subcommittee meet and weigh in. We'd really like to finalize the RFP. Ultimately, we will then need to release that, but also concurrently, there will be, just funding-wise, there will need to be a cooperative agreement between the Air District and the City of Fresno for that work. But again, as Erica, you put it very well, the purpose with our overall steering committee not being to go through the entire RFP right now. That's why the steering committee really wanted to form that subcommittee to take a deep dive into the details. But you know, I'm available with any questions, and I know the Air District team is as well.
Maybe if I can just
thank you for that. Oh, go ahead, Ryan. You beat me to it.
Yeah, I just want to add, oh, okay, sorry. Add a little bit. So you know, we're very fortunate. That was one of the first project plans that we submitted to CARB to get the allowance to spend the incentive funding on this measure. It was the first one that CARB had formally approved in the state for any type of these using the new guidelines for funding. We actually have an item that we're taking to our board yesterday that would allow our executive officer to enter into the agreements that Scott was just talking about. So yeah, we're looking forward to continuing to work with the steering committee and the city and moving this important measure forward. So thanks.
Thanks to both of you. I do know that we talked about there is not yet a date for that subcommittee meeting, but there will be a doodle poll going out related to when that's scheduled. So like the committee should look for that. And then the other thing that I had in my notes from the last time we talked about this is that, you know, this committee was really committed to making sure that some major edits were made or were included in the first or in the final draft. And so we talked about timeframes, and maybe Scott, you can give a little sense of how much time before you need to submit this, because the draft that they're looking at now has some tentative dates in it about December and other dates on when the RFP would be due. Can you talk about flexibility with any of that so there's clarity when they read it?
Absolutely.
Erica, just real quick, just to correct, we did send, and we'll send an email too, but we do have a date for that subcommittee meeting, and it is the 28th. So that just was decided today, and more information will go out.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. I was just going to add, as far as time frame and dates, you know, that really assumes that we would come out of the subcommittee with consensus and be in a position, you know, with our funding partner, Air District, through AB 617 funding, to be able to move forward. If there is more time needed, if we wind up needing to kind of revise and refine and come back, then the dates would shift back in time. Of course, there's that balancing act, right, between really spending a lot of time on the RFP versus the desire to really complete the truck rerouting study, be able to go before our city council and recommend a change in the truck route map and the ordinance that goes with it. So we are very invested and look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you, Scott. So just to reiterate, it sounds like the draft that you would have gotten in the email on Monday, and Larry sent a note in the chat that asked what went out on Monday. On Monday, there was an email from AB 617 email address that basically said there's a link and an attachment to this RFP. And then there was a note that to do a doodle poll on available dates. And so what Jamie was just speaking to is that looks like the date they're choosing is going to be the 28th of October for the subcommittee meeting. And then there was also a link to the current version or an attachment to the current version of the RFP that Scott's been talking about. So you should have received that in an email. But what I suspect will happen, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you firm up this subcommittee date, you'll also send that attachment or that link again so everybody can see it.
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
And
So look for an email with.
And Erica, just so you know, we're sending this information to the entire committee. We did earlier in the week, and we will again. We're not just sending it to a handful of people. It is going to everyone.
Perfect. So anybody can weigh in on this RFP, even if you haven't been involved in the subcommittee in the past. I think anyone can probably attend the subcommittee meeting if you'd like to. And if you can't, you can still submit comments as well. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a real quick question on this. I was at the budget meeting this afternoon in which this was discussed, Scott, and I'm wondering, what is the financial breakdown between the 617 money that's going to fund this and the city? Because all I heard is $60,000 of soft in kind from the city, and I'm probably missing something.
And Lisa, that's a great question. So that is within the city's budget. The RFP as drafted does contain a dollar amount through AB 617. So I will pull that up momentarily. But generally, I'm not, perhaps Ryan or the team would want to speak to AB 617 versus any other non-city funding sources as well.
Well, the amount that was talked about was 500,000 from AB 617, and I'm wondering how much is the city contributing out of curiosity, because I thought they were going to at least do 250. Or am I wrong, or something changed?
Thus far, the discussion had been city with what's budgeted on the city side of providing all of the just in-kind services of traffic counts and actually managing the consultant through that process, that the city would provide that. But to date, there have not been any other city budget approvals committing additional funding beyond that.
So it's going to be writing the RFP, managing the RFP, and traffic counts, basically. Oversight.
And, correct, and oversight all the way through the study period itself. So that includes reviewing the consultant's, submissions, and then also managing that consultant contract, confirming that the deliverables, the work was done, properly and completely prior to paying the bills. So all of that would be on the city side.
So the staff labor and the oversight and all that, the city's gonna take care of that, and that's not gonna come from the 500,000, right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Lisa. I see questions from Nyameen and Ivanka. And for those of you, so we'll hit Nyameen first, and then just in the chat, I want you to know that Heather has posted a copy that you can download of the RFP as it stands right now. You can download that directly from the chat if you're on a computer. And go right ahead.
Yeah,
Nyameen.
it's a process question. I have not been part of the subcommittee. I'm on the other subcommittee and I do not have the time to join the meeting. What would be, to whom do I send my comments? Would it be to the Air District or who, so that they can get considered?
Good question. We talked about this yesterday, and the Air District is happy to collect the feedback from this committee if you're not able to attend the subcommittee meeting or if you're not officially on it. Which Air District person would like to gather those, and would you either unmute yourself or write your name in the chat?
You can just send it to the AB 617 email. We'll put that in the chat.
Perfect. So stay attuned for the chat. If you cannot attend the meeting for the subcommittee, or if you want to just provide your feedback in advance in some other way, you can use this AB 617 email, which Heather has just written in the chat. And for those of you on the phone, that email address is ab617@valleyair.org. Thanks, Naimeen. Ivanka, you're up.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for bringing that question up, Lisa. I was on the budget hearings today. I did bring this to the attention of the City Council, requesting $500,000 for a truck reroute. Miguel Arias, council member for District 3, he did ask Scott what the city was going to be responsible for, and that's that $60,000 in kind and management / overseeing of it. My concern, though, is two things. a truck reroute study is already the city accountable for because of the Southwest Pacific Plan, and this is what I brought to the council today. That was supposed to be done since 2018. So Southwest Pacific Plan overlaps the majority and same area of the region of our 617 community. So there needs to be more skin in the game from the city's end. Our money on the CERP funding end is limited with all of our measures. So I just want to make sure that our whole committee understands the whole picture. I do think, Scott, we will be pushing on you. And when Lisa asked you the question of how much we're putting in, the answer isn't good enough that it wasn't budgeted in. It's because your division didn't ask for that in your budget. So there needs to be more on the table than just the in-kind donations, because you're also responsible for a truck reroute study that was already in play before this CERP was even thought of. And then the other thing that I'm looking forward to, we are asking for more than just one typical engineering agency that knows how to do a reroute study just for the mechanics of truck counts and that. We are asking for a proposal of all the things we've put in for, which means I need clarification and more understanding of when these agencies look at this proposal that we're going to put out there and they say that's a lot more than what we normally do for this cost, and they come back with an answer but say they need more than 500,000, at what point will the city or will we as a committee say to our CERT funds, we need more funds? So if it goes and if there's a need for more than 500,000, then there's a need for more than just in-kind donation of staff time and management and administration. Where's the next set of money that's coming from? Because 500,000 is not going to go a long way once this proposal is looked at and the things that we are asking for.
This is Scott. I'll go ahead and respond. That's a great comment, great question. From the city budget perspective, if there are additional dollars that are expected either through the steering committee or our partners with the Air District, that would certainly be something that our administration and the city council would have to consider. These are, of course, as we all know, the economy and COVID, these are very difficult times. And just generally speaking, the city is not undertaking new general fund types of requests. Those are your sales tax, basic property tax funds that take care of public safety, park maintenance, not much else. For example, in Public Works, we do not have any dollars of general fund in street maintenance, not at all. We don't even pay the street light power bills with general fund. We're a gas tax, Measure C type agency department. So with that, that would have to be considered. And then in terms of the scope of the study, that's exactly what the truck rerouting subcommittee is really for. I guess just my own recommendation on that is, while we could add a lot more to the study, if we can accomplish the goal of achieving truck rerouting in the community without spending as much, and then preserve more funding for the other priorities the steering committee has outlined and things that are in the plan, wouldn't that be a valid effort? Wouldn't that be something desirable? Because sure, we could spend $1 million on the truck rerouting study if we really wanted to throw anything and everything in there, but is that necessary? Or do we save more funding for other things that the steering committee has identified? So looking forward to that work with the subcommittee.
Scott, at the budget meeting today, there were motions to the tune and in the planning department of adding additional studies for looking at the Barrio Unidas building, a focused EIR, an impact analysis. All that came up to $525K. I'm thinking you need to go back, since we're in the budget process, and you might want to ask for maybe $100,000 at least as good faith money to this committee and to the Air District, in case there are cost overruns to cover this study. If we don't use it, that's great. But if we need it, it needs to be there, because right now the city is getting $500,000 for something they should have already been doing. And, you know, I appreciate the in-kind soft money contributions that the city is going for, but this community needs this study done, and it needs it done right. It needs to address the issues that have been brought up by this committee, and the city needs to take a step forward toward us. And $100,000 is nothing in comparison to, you know, $525K that they just allocated for other projects. So to say that there's not money there is kind of a little bit disingenuous. And if I need to talk to Arias and people, let me know.
Lisa, thank you for that comment. And I do want to give, just be mindful, guys. I know we're, this is your meeting, and we want to make sure you talk about things that you're really, really interested in speaking about. We have a lot of other things on the agenda. And so while I don't want to direct people off of this item, we've got 4 people with their hands up. So let me flag Gregory, you're next. And then but before we go to Gregory, I want to check our Spanish line and make sure that there aren't any Spanish questions, Spanish language questions on this topic. Are there any Spanish language questions?
No questions or comments on the conference line.
Thank you. All right, Gregory, you are up, and then we will take Venice. And then I'm going to continue to ask our friends at the city to please respond via chat as we continue to go through this. I don't want to go too quickly through this item, but we have taken up the entire time for standing updates and not gotten to the other standing updates. And I know you also want to hear about enforcement, and you also want to hear from DPR. So just keep that in mind and be really mindful that this is your meeting, but it also does require some additional feedback from other people. A couple other comments on this item before we let Scott answer everything else in the chat.
So Erica is Gregory. I just want to be very succinct by saying the budget process is not driven by the staff. It is driven by the council members. And the council members have not put this effort of a truck route study first. They have put other priorities first. So if you have concerns, don't get on Scott, get on the council members. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, Gregory, but I disagree because it was specifically asked by Miguel today.
Yes.
This was taken care of so that he would not have to make that motion himself. And the answer is there's 60,000 in-kind donations and that 500,000 from the Air District. So the answer that was given makes it appear that it is solved, and that's not the true answer.
Yes.
So it's not about
again,
getting
Ivanka,
on one person.
you need to deal with the council.
I am calling the city out, and I'm not personally attacking anyone. It's this city.
No, I don't take it that way. And I don't think Scott takes it that way. Ivanka, you need to address that to the council. Because they're the policymakers with 5 votes.
You're not telling me something.
But you are the city representative here, Gregory.
Huh?
So a couple things. So Gregory, if I can take over for a second.
Sure.
What I'm hearing Gregory say is that, and thank you for that comment, it is an important governance comment, that the council directs policy and priorities and the staff gives answers around that at the city level. Scott is here as a staff representative of the city. I think Scott is hearing this committee say, this truck rerouting study is incredibly important. There are a lot of people on this call that I think will be reaching out to either their city council members and others that they know at the city to make sure this remains a priority. And I think Scott's hearing loud and clear that this is important. More money might be needed to have available if the scope of the RFP needs to grow after you've taken a look at it. So he hears that, and that we, I think at the subcommittee, you know, this truck rerouting subcommittee will need to work and dive into these details. In advance of that, if this group can make sure to review it as it stands right now, flag some of those things, I think what Scott, tell me if I'm wrong, you are going to be ready to take all of that feedback, all of the input, and know that this is so important to this committee. You can't hear more loudly that this is a real priority.
Absolutely. We recognize it as a very high priority, and I think that's why this item has been on each agenda these past months. We're eager to get underway.
Thank you, Scott. Venice, close us out, please. Thank you. And
Yeah,
apologies to those of you on the other items that we're running a little long. Just bear with us for a second. This is just a huge item for this committee, and we just really want to make sure we get through it.
Thank you. I just have 3 points. First, I want to thank Ivanka for bringing up the historical aspect of this issue. It is policy T 9.1, and it was clearly discussed and clearly a priority from the community's perspective all throughout the Southwest Pacific Plan. My second point is that the community has been really clear that this is a top priority and are not willing to sort of let this fall by the wayside, although it hasn't risen to the priority level from the city's perspective. And then thirdly, I would say, given that the impact of continued exposure to PM 2.5, the health risks, the development of chronic lung disease, and all of the issues that place Black and Brown communities at increased risk for poor COVID outcomes, is there a possibility of using the CARES dollars to actually help fund a legitimate study that really does what we need it to do? Because it would be prevention, because obviously the more people that are impacted by developing lung disease, the worse outcome they're going to have if they are infected with COVID. So why could we not utilize some of the CARES dollars to really address this issue? It's longstanding. It's not going to change without some real investment. And the investment would be not only to the health and welfare now, but it would be an investment in making sure that the COVID level, the COVID infection and the COVID outcomes would be minimized by reducing the exposure. And that's the whole point of using the truck rerouting, is that we get these mobile emissions out of our communities, and we remove some of the toxic emissions that people are inhaling that are creating these long-term issues. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Venice. And if there is an answer on the CARES dollars that we can get quickly, we'll accept it now. Otherwise, please put that in the chat. And I think that the Air District, we talked about this, I think, before in other meetings, and it definitely has sparked some interest. But I don't know if that's an answer we can get today. Do we know, Scott, or someone from the Air District, about CARES Act funding and the viability of something like that, or that process, if we can talk about that quickly?
Yes, I could respond to that quickly. With CARES, our city council has been driving that process as far as where the CARES dollars are allocated. A couple things to add. One is that the CARES dollars are expiring December 30th, and whatever the money is spent on must be fully delivered, installed, and complete. Basically about 75 days from now. So this type of study would not be able to meet that deadline. I'd also add, even if we talked about that back in March, the challenge is that this is really a pre-existing condition. Granted, COVID, the health risks, those are real. Those and the greater exposure, greater susceptibility, that is an absolute concern. I wholeheartedly recognize, I've been watching the data, but it is a pre-existing condition and not one that can be solely attributed to COVID. So that would have been a real challenge. In any case, I think with the Air District, AB 617, the city's contribution, I fully believe, I mean, we're going to be there on necessary funds and scope to get this accomplished and get hopefully, and we culminate that with a vote of the Fresno City Council that changes truck routes to the desired outcome.
All right, thanks,
I think
Scott.
it's a
Thanks
better
for taking
investment than a wellness center for the police. So.
Thanks, Denise. All right, so I think we have definitely talked about this item, and I apologize to those of you that are on the other subcommittee report outs. We're running a little bit behind. I do want to make sure that our third-party participants at DPR and CARB are still available to do their items just a little bit late. And then one other comment I'd like to make just for the larger committee. We want robust conversation, but it was really important to be reminded by Amelia that we can't have each other talking over one another. It's a little harder for interpretation. So if you don't mind, please take one comment at a time so they can interpret everything for our Spanish speakers. We do appreciate that, and we want to make sure everyone gets heard. There were a lot of really great comments in that last dialogue, and I appreciate the feedback. And Scott, I think, has heard the feedback, and he's optimistic that this truck rerouting subcommittee meeting is going to be a great working group meeting where we're all going to come together and figure out what needs to be in that RFP and how to pay for it. Come with your comments, come with your suggestions, and be ready to dig in. And Scott sounds like he's ready to take that on. So without further ado, we are going to move on to School Filtration and Bus Committee. Jamie, can you fill us in on that item?
Yes, and I apologize already. We were so close to being able to do this tomorrow, but I was a little concerned about interpretation, and we wanted to make sure that we had interpretation lined up, and we really just didn't get the communication going with the school district to make it happen. But it is going to happen, and I think a special shout out go to Naimeen and Eric, because they were really the folks kind of working behind the scenes to make sure that this is a priority for the trustees. And we've also been doing a lot of work just to better understand HVAC systems and some of the limitations and some of the challenges. And I just want to real quickly show you all a visual aid. I asked here at our building, our folks, our facilities folks, to test out 2 filters. And I'm going to back up just so you can see. These are 2-inch filters. They're fairly standard in that they're similar to what you might even have at your home. These filters are extremely dirty, and they were only about 5 weeks on our roof. And they're a little bit different too. You can see that one is actually a little bit different in that it's a tiny bit darker. I don't know if it shows up on Zoom. This one caught a little bit more pollution than this one did. And so I asked our facilities guys, why is that? Is the darker one doing a better job? And they said, no, what's happening is the darker ones from an older HVAC system, and it has more seepage. It has more of the dirty air going through it. And so it is working harder. It is putting more stress on the system overall, and it is still collecting and producing the same level of cleanliness in the air in this one, but it's just having to work harder. And therefore, how HVAC systems work is that they take the cold air that's already in a building or home, they send it across the filter and send it back into the building. And it has very little, it has a marginal amount of air from outside that's brought in. When you have an older unit, it has more seepage, so more of the air from outside goes across that filter and gets brought in. So even in our own building, we saw a huge difference between what was a filter that was newer, our filter that was on a system or a unit that was newer being about a year old versus one that was just 10 years old. So we know, based on just some anecdotal research that we've been doing, that there really is going to be a lot of differences and variations in what these schools can take on. We also, I want to thank Keith. He was nice enough to share with us a quote that they got. And we're actually talking to the grant folks over at CARB to see exactly what the grant will fund, exactly where there is wiggle room on whether or not that grant is going to be able to fund some of these full packages. The MERV rating of these filters was a 14, just so you know. That's what we're all going for, is these MERV 14. So we're still working on the details to make sure that the grant application is such that it has as much flexibility as is allowable within the CARB guidelines to get these filters in as many schools as possible. I will also tell you that there was just a new piece of legislation passed at the state level, 841, I believe, that talks specifically about air filtration in schools. And all I know is recently signed by the governor. I don't have a lot of information on it, but we're hoping to gather some of that information to be able to share with the subcommittee at the meeting. And then the last part is that electric school buses, we're continuing to deploy electric school buses in our steering committee school districts that are not Fresno Unified. We're continuing to process those, and we are planning to have a conversation with Fresno Unified to really get them on board with those electric school buses. That's the very brief update of what's been doing. And we have a meeting that is now scheduled for October 26th. Again, hats off to Eric and Naimeen, because I believe we have as many trustees as we can have coming to this meeting. That's going to be Trustee Johanneson Rosas, Trustee Thomas, and Trustee Islas. So they have all said that they will be there, plus they are bringing some of the Fresno Unified staff with them. It will be at noon. That was the time that they could all make it on Monday, the 26th. I apologize it's not in the evening. I did push for that, but they pushed back and said noon was the best we could do. We will have interpretation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That is awesome, Jamie. I know that it was hard to get some trustees there, so that's huge success that you have the max number. Eric says thank you for all your work on this and the heavy lift on that. What questions do we have for Jamie, if any, on this item?
How is the inventory of what is at the schools, or is that going to also be discussed on the 26th?
We're going to talk, we've got a pretty good inventory of what's at the non-Fresno Unified schools. It's the Fresno Unified schools where we really are struggling to get that information. So we're going to talk a little bit more. In a perfect world, we could get Fresno Unified as a district to come on board and look at doing this at all of the schools in this region.
Any other questions for Jamie? Awesome. All right, Chai, you are up. Talk about community air monitoring. Oh, we've got one from the Spanish line.
No, sí, nomás de que a qué horas va a ser esa reunión el día 26. En la
Yes.
mañana, ¿a qué horas?
Yes, what time will that meeting be? In the morning, what time?
It will be at noon, so lunchtime, 12 noon on Monday, October 26th. And we'll send out more information about it tomorrow. If we haven't already, it might already be in your inbox.
Thank you. And apologies for not checking on the Spanish line. That was my bad.
Thank you.
All right, next is Chai. Chai, would you like to give the air monitoring update?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody here. Hope you're all doing well. I'll just give a brief overview of what we've been doing. There's a lot of things that are happening. Just last night, the Central Unified School Board approved our request to monitor at Madison Elementary. So that's been signed. So really excited for that we can start monitoring over there. And we're also working with, still continuing to work with Fresno Unified to get equipment at the Edison High School location. And lastly here, also wanted to, as we discussed last month with the committee, and we have finally installed the air monitoring at West Fresno Middle School, which is about 1 mile northwest of the Orange Center Elementary School. And wanted to just thank the committee for the support for that. And a huge thanks to Keith, who's also here as well from Washington Unified School District, for his support and assistance to really help us put that in pretty quickly. It's just, once we got that approval, we went in and it was less than a week, and he provided all the necessary resources for us to get it installed. So thank you for that, Keith. We're also continuing to use a air monitoring van to respond to community concerns. There was a request to monitor the high delivery van traffic near the Amazon Local Delivery Center, and that's located just north of Cedar and Church Avenues. So we did that on September 16th, and that air monitoring van data is posted on the website right now. And we're going to continue to update these files as we get additional data there. And we're still continuing to do our routine monitoring throughout the community as well. And we have a few web updates as well. We posted the air monitoring data from the last few months on our website, while CARB is still putting some updates onto their AQView site. So we're supplementing that to make sure that the committee and the public has access to the latest monitoring data there for the stationary data. In addition to that, we've also went ahead and added the van data on our website now as well. So if you go to the Fresno air monitoring website there, you'll be able to get that information. And lastly here, we just recently posted our 2020 Q2 quarterly report. That's available on the website. So when we get some time, please take a look at that. And that concludes my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hi, it looks like we had one question from Eric about West Fresno. Did you comment about where we are on the West Fresno?
Are you talking about the West Fresno Elementaries? Oh, West Fresno Middle School? So that's...
Eric, do you want to clarify that question?
So that was the one that I had mentioned, that we had just recently installed air monitoring equipment over there, and the PM2.5 and ozone data is already available on our website, so you can go there and see the readings on those.
Perfect. Yes, he did clarify that you did answer that. Thank you for that. We've got two questions that I see. The first one is Ivanka and then Naimeen. Ivanka, would you like to go?
Yeah, thanks for that update. I was looking at the newsletters on the website and the air newsletters, and the data is the 24-hour period, like an average. But I'm wondering if there's any way to make that so that the actual hours are seen, because if community goes on there to look at this so that you know how to plan your day, if you can actually see the hourly spikes versus just the average, then you can start to actually get a gist of, oh, it's during this period of the day when it's the hottest, or wherever that may be. So you can actually start seeing the patterns based on the hours of the day. Because right now, when you're looking at this, it's almost like, yeah, that's good to know, but that already passed. But if you're looking at past information, you can at least try to understand what were the worst parts of the day or the timing of the day, that you can then say, okay, maybe I shouldn't be going outside after this hour if you have asthma, or maybe this is the best time of the day to be going out.
So just so that I'm clear on what you're referring to. So we have our weekly reports that we publish, and then there's also the real-time air monitoring data that you can access.
The weekly ones, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the weekly wasn't intended for that. The weekly was just intended to get a general idea of the week, where the emissions are. If you want the hourly, the way that you're talking about, that is available on some of the live data that we have there, and it does provide a historical view as well if you want to go back through the dates on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ivanka. Nyameen, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, more than a question is a comment. And I had already shared this, I believe, with Ryan and maybe Jamie. So right now, someone that is not too familiar with the AB617 doesn't even know where to look for these monitors. So I had to hold the hand of a community organization that is located across the street from Roosevelt that wanted to know because they heard from another person, another community member, that they had that there was a monitor in the school. And then they were confused because they went to the RAN monitors and they couldn't see it. So I was wondering when can there could be some way for any person, regardless of their involvement in AB617, to have like a quick and easy access to the data from these monitors, because it was like literally almost impossible for her to find it without asking me.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually have on my list to do, and it literally, I just checked, it says Naimeen's idea, and it says a one-pager about what AB617 is, and then a postcard about checking AB16 air quality monitoring data. And I just haven't gotten to it. It is on my list, I just haven't gotten to it. So I appreciate you bringing it back to the top.
Yeah, and more than thank you. That's wonderful, Jamie. I think that also, even with the residents, right, that are part of this committee and all us advocates, we want to direct people to use that data from these monitors. Otherwise, why do we have all these, multiple monitors if they don't know where to look for the one that is closer to their home or their school, right? Especially with these days that we have with super bad air quality. I think, having that information more like, visible and again, easy to access. I don't know if it's a link, just like, you have the AB617 little icon on your main landing page, something like that say, AB617 air monitor, something like that, so that it's also available in the internet.
Yeah, and we're also working on basically like a map, an interactive map, and they can look through that map. It'll show where the monitor is. It'll show the readings and all of that. So we do understand that it is a little bit hard just for the general public to navigate through it, who may not be as familiar, but that is definitely in the works to try to make it a lot easier for everyone to access.
Good points, Naimeen, and I see Jamie and Chai taking a lot of notes, and I think by next meeting, hopefully we can put something together and show and get input on.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, go ahead, Genevieve.
I'm sorry if this is already addressed, but why are these monitors not being connected to RAN? There's so much work being done to get the word out on RAN, and some of us already get the text message alerts connected to those monitors. And so it would seem, in terms of trying to facilitate that community education, that this would be the perfect place to merge that data. And I'm wondering why that's not the route you're taking.
Part of that is just a technology challenge that we're having, and we are looking at our not the AB617 data. That data actually is, the back end of it is much cleaner because it's newer, but the back end architecture that RAN is built on, we're reviewing and looking at it to see, as you all know, we've struggled with reliability, to be quite honest. And we're looking at ways to make that back end data structure that RAN hangs on much more reliable. And that's kind of the challenge that we're having right now. RAN needs, it's a little long in the tooth, so we're working on trying to bring it into the new decade.
So is the goal to eventually merge the programs?
Ideally, yes, but at this point, I don't exactly know where we're going to end up with all of this.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for that question, Genevieve, and thanks for the answers to the Air District. Any questions from the Spanish line before we switch agenda items?
No.
Don't?
I have a comment.
Nope.
I have a comment. Isabel, regarding the trucks, in the reports that we received in the city of Fresno, they said that the trucks, the Alliance, they were parking in the streets. And now that I'm seeing is that they are passing a lot through the streets. And since I live on Orange Street, I see a lot of trucks that they're driving through the street. And I don't know why this is happening before we even see this. That's my comment.
Denise, just so we have better understanding, are they heavy duty diesel trucks? Are they like what type of vehicle are they when she says trucks?
They're heavy duty trucks, big trucks.
Okay. All right, and so her concern is that they're driving through the residential streets and not staying just to the truck routes?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds
All
like
right.
some mobile source enforcement is needed.
Yeah. And it's a very timely topic because we do have both, obviously district enforcement, but then ARB enforcement. And depending on the circumstances, if trucks aren't abiding by truck routes and are deviating from that, that's potentially, some code enforcement or something.
Yeah, Ryan, just to clarify a little bit more as well, but her comment was related to, remember how she's mentioned before where they would park on that street and kind of just wait. So basically she's saying that they're no longer doing that, but she is now noticing them on her street, on the actual, streets in the community.
Yeah. Okay.
And
yeah.
this is Justin with CARB enforcement. I'm sorry I had double
Yes, that's
muting
what's
here. I was on the phone.
Yes, Isabel said, I'm sorry. Isabel said that's what's happening, and it wasn't happening before.
So we're going to be out there. This is CARB enforcement before the end of the year, and I took note of Orange Street, and I will make sure that we drive by there and make sure that all those trucks are compliant and see if there is a reason why they're going that way.
Yeah, and I think we'll also call and get more information from Isabel so we can follow up.
I have a question regarding this. Justin, you're in Sacramento and you can only be here when you can be here. So for immediate response, are you connected to the CHP? Are there CHP rules that they know they're supposed to follow according to heavy duty trucks and what these CARB regulations are? So what is the fastest response when it's actually happening? Is it calling the CHP even though it's in, it's in city streets, but it's heavy duty trucks? So that's a state, that's a state authority, or?
And actually, Ivanka, I want to take your question really quickly, but just note on the agenda, everyone, we are actually going to move to the enforcement update because I feel like we're talking about that anyway. And Justin and Jason from Air District are here. We're talking about enforcement things. Let's move to that. And Justin, if you want to answer that question, and then we'll get back to that enforcement update agenda item. So just in terms of following along, we are moving to the enforcement update to just keep this conversation moving. So Justin, go ahead.
And Eric Bissinger is actually on the Zoom meeting as well, and he has a lot more experience with mobile sources than I do. So Eric, do you mind taking this question for me?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
She's asking about who is the fastest, how to get a fastest response if CARB is in Sacramento. Can they call CHP, or is there a faster response that they should be contacting aside from CARB for these trucks driving through the community?
Well, being that we are in Sacramento, it'd be hard for us to get there and be there all the time. But I mean, in my opinion, I think like a regular you know, if we go there and check regularly, it'll deter them away. You know, if we catch them and we can give them a ticket, I think that'll, you know, kind of make them, you know, truckers tend to talk to each other a lot. So I would imagine the word would get around, and that they would avoid that area once, you know, once people start getting tickets. So, I mean, it would be nice if, you know, CHP could regularly go by and see if there's, or the city, if it's, you know, if they're in areas that are no parking or just areas like that, or, but if it's legal parking and it's legal idling, that would be difficult.
So Justin and Eric, I think what we could do is we can make a commitment to sending out to the steering committee with that information on who they would need to contact or who will be the best person to contact, and, you know, and respond as quickly as possible.
Hold on,
that. And Lisa, I do see your question, but I want to hold questions. I want to get us to the presentation. Just if your question is regarding enforcement, do you mind waiting until Justin or Jason actually their presentation? Okay, because they might answer your question, so I want to be mindful of that.
Actually, it won't.
And Ivanka, I'll answer it further in the chat.
I actually read the presentation and I actually have more questions, but this one goes back to enforcement and issuing of citations from the Air District versus the state. Back, I believe it was in January, or it was in January, February, or March of this year when Karen was still around. We had suggested and we had talked about in our meeting about this exact problem. You know, we'll call Sacramento, someone will complain, but by the time Sacramento gets down here, they're either gone or nothing really happens. You have to catch them in the act. And part of the discussion we had the earlier part of this year was, is there a possibility of CARB and the Air District entering into an MOU on enforcement? So the Air District could actually send out staff to go ahead and do the investigation and do the citation writing, basically.
So I can answer part of that, Lisa. We actually have the authority under the state regulation for the idling diesel and school bus to cite people for not complying with the state regulations. That's a part that we can, and we have the authority to do right now without being in an MOU. There are other regulations under the mobile that when it comes to like emissions and stuff like that, that we don't have the authority, which would take something like an MOU to do.
So how do we go about streamlining some of this stuff? Because that seems like would be a solution, both on the state side as cost saving from sending their people traveling, and also save the district time as well.
Yeah, we can discuss that more with CARB to see what things are available.
Since February.
Understood.
No, and it is difficult.
Thanks for that reminder.
It is difficult to catch somebody idling, but if you see a non-compliant truck or a non-compliant bus, if they can forward the information to us, we'll jump right on it.
And this is Justin. This is going to be a part of my presentation where we're enhancing our idling sweeps, and other agencies in the community can actually report license plate information or TRU information to myself or Eric, and we will actually do the desk audit to make sure that they are compliant with our rules and regulations. So even if we cannot be out there, you know, you guys can then be the eyes and the ears, the city, the district, the community.
Thanks, Justin and Eric. So really quickly, I want everyone to do a really quick time check, in part because I want to be responsible and respectful to you all. So the meeting is supposed to end at 7:30. We are a little over on our agenda items, and we are going to tackle enforcement. We are going to skip the DPR update, and that's for a number of reasons, but The conversation on truck rerouting was incredibly important. I think this enforcement conversation and the questions you have there are also incredibly important. We will bring the DPR update back to you when DPR is available again to speak with us. That being said, we are going to talk about enforcement, but it's going to probably go into the discussion about the annual report. So know that we're going to run a little bit long on that conversation and might be ending the meeting a little bit on time, but we're going to need you to provide feedback in other ways in addition to just the time that's on this meeting. So I'm giving you that heads up now just as a disclaimer. We're going to do our best to get everything done on time like we typically do, but I did want to make sure you know that we're going to skip the DPR update, go to enforcement, and then might cut in a little bit to the annual report feedback, okay? Any comments or questions related to items we haven't covered? I really appreciate those of you that are putting the information and questions in the chat. It's an active answer and translation activity in that chat, so please do direct your questions through that and we will do our absolute best to get to those, and they will be documented in the record for this meeting. So enforcement update by Air District, that's Jason and Justin. You guys are up. I think Jason, you're first. Would you like to move forward? And we'll try and go this quickly as possible to get back on schedule if we can. Thank you all.
Sure. All right. Is everybody seeing my presentation?
Yes.
Yes, you're good.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, like Erica said, I'm going to try to move through this fairly quickly since we are running a little long. I think this is about the third update that we've given on our enforcement. So some of this will be kind of stuff that you've probably already heard before anyways, but we'll still kind of go through it, just kind of give you an update on kind of where we're at with implementation of our measures. So there were 6 different enforcement measures in the CERP for the South Central Fresno community, and I'll kind of go through each one of those one by one. Starting with the residential wood burning curtailments, enhanced enforcement of our wood burning curtailments under District Rule 4901. There's really hasn't been much update to this since the last update that we gave you back in June, because this is just a wintertime season that these curtailments are in effect. So we are getting ready to go back into our check before you burn season coming up here at the end of this month. But just to give kind of again a recap of last year's enforcement, during this period from November 1st through the end of February, on each day that a curtailment was declared for Fresno County, we dedicated 4 hours of enforcement specifically within the South Central Fresno community. And over the season as a whole, in addition to that surveillance, we also responded to 23 public complaints from members of the community. And over that 4-month period, there was a total of 101 violations that were found. And, as we talk about, each of these measures, I put some questions into the presentation. We are always continuing to seek additional feedback from the community if there's areas that we may have missed or haven't captured yet in our enforcement and our surveillance that maybe we could be focusing on more. I think for the sake of time, if you could please put those into the chat or send them in an email after the meeting if you think of them to that 617 at the ab617@valleyair.org email. So the next measure was our enforcement of the illegal open burning of residential waste. In our commitments in the CERP, we've committed to doing targeted enforcement in the community every quarter. Over the first half of 2020, so January through the end of June, we responded to 24 public complaints about open burning in addition to our surveillance that our staff has been doing out there. And a total of 5 confirmed violations were found. And this kind of shows where those were located at. Enhanced enforcement of our Regulation 8 requirements, which is the fugitive dust requirements. So again, this was another measure on the SERP for enforcement aimed at limiting potential for localized PM10 impacts associated with construction sites and other earth moving activities and open areas within the community. So our inspectors have been out again doing targeted enforcement at these sites during the second and third quarters. Those were the 2 quarters of the year that we committed to in the SERP, because that's the warmer time of the year when dust is more likely to be occurring. And so, we've been visiting, any site within the community that has an active dust control plan or construction notification on file with us where we know there's construction activity occurring. We've been doing inspections at each of those sites, in addition to some just general surveillance around the area, looking for other potential sources as well. And then the enhanced enforcement of the statewide anti-idling regulation. And as Ryan kind of alluded to, the district's limitation right now on enforcement with heavy duty trucks really is limited to the idling portion of the regulation. So, idling more than 5 minutes on, any vehicle that's rated over 10 tons, or excuse me, 10,000 pounds. And we have been doing targeted enforcement in the community each quarter. We're always seeking additional feedback, though, on additional hotspots or areas where you've noticed idling, or specific times of day that idling tends to occur that we could focus on. Because maybe we're hitting the right spots, but we're just not there at the right times of the day. So any of that information that you can provide to us is always appreciated. And this kind of shows, this was provided to us by CARB, which showed some estimations based on the industry within the community of areas where higher concentrations of idling are expected to be likely. And the check marks on here indicate areas that our district staff have visited so far with our targeted enforcement efforts. So you can see a lot of the blue and darker blue and green squares where the highest concentrations are expected. We've pretty much hit most of those. But again, if there's other areas that, that you've noticed idling that you want to recommend to us or can give us some additional information on, feel free to put that in the chat or send us an email. Next up was the enhanced inspection frequency of our permitted stationary sources. So all of our stationary sources within the AB 617 community, which there's 370 permitted facilities within the community boundary. We went through at the beginning of all of this and identified any facility that has had an emissions violation within the last 3 years. We moved them up to an inspection frequency of 2 inspections per year. So basically every 6 months. And so we have been out there doing lots of inspections at these facilities. During the first half of 2020, a total of 23 enforcement actions were taken at different permitted sources within the community. And I believe, we have gotten some questions about, specific information, and we are planning on providing, after this, kind of a follow-up report to the community that kind of provides the more detailed information on pretty much everything I'm talking about tonight. So the detailed breakdown of all these complaints and violations, similar to the report that we provided back with the when we were developing the CERT. And then the last one was the pilot training program for conducting self-inspections at gasoline stations. Not a whole lot of movement since the last update we gave you in June. We have developed the outline for this training, but again, since the COVID pandemic is still ongoing, to try to limit exposure of our staff doing the hands-on training, we've kind of been on hold with implementing the actual in-person training for this measure. But we are looking forward to getting out there, as soon as we can safely do so. And then last, I wanted to talk real quick just about kind of in general reporting complaints to the district. For any type of violation, there's a number of ways that you can report a complaint. You can report it by telephone. There's a 24-hour 800 number that you can call. And there are complaint lines available both in English and in Spanish. And our inspectors that are on call after hours do have access to translation services, so they can respond to those Spanish complaints as well. You can also submit complaints through our district website at valleyair.org, or if you have our mobile app on your phone, you can submit a complaint through the app. And during the first half of 2020, so again, January through the end of June, our district staff responded to a total of 64 complaints in the South Central Fresno community for, and that's total of all types of complaints, including open burning, the residential wood burning, fugitive dust, odors, unpermitted equipment, and also emissions from regulated facilities. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, so I see a lot of you have taken my request to heart. Thank you, Lisa, for putting lots of questions in the chat. We're going to let Jason answer some of those via chat, and we're going to go straight to Justin, and then we'll go back to a complete question and answer for both of those gentlemen when we're all done, just to make sure there's clarity on who does what. So Justin, if you can go next, and then Jason, handle the chat, and anything we don't cover, we will come back to at the Q&A at the end.
Okay, let me pull up my slides here. You know what, it's not popping up, so I'll just, I'll continue and I'll put my contact information in the chat. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Shields, and I work for the Community Outreach and Enforcement section in CARB's Enforcement Division. I wanted to take this time that I have tonight to go over what we did earlier this year, what we are planning to do before the end of the year, and to ask for your feedback about if you, the community, feels this is the appropriate direction for CARB to take. To begin, I wanted to talk about the no idling signs CARB has available. These signs were designed with Caltrans to be able to be posted on public roads. These signs can act as a deterrent from heavy-duty diesel trucks from idling where they are not allowed. If the community or another agency sees value in getting these signs posted, please let me know where you feel they would have the most impact. If this is something the community wants, then I will reach out to the city and begin discussions to provide them with no idling signs free of charge. As we discussed in one of the previous meetings, CARB staff have been conducting idling sweeps in the community. In March, CARB brainstormed and tried to identify a way to further enhance enforcement of these idling sweeps. What we ended up doing was enhancing the idling sweeps to also look at heavy-duty diesel trucks to determine compliance with not only CARB's idling regulation, but also with CARB's truck and bus regulation and the Transportation Refrigeration Unit regulation, also known as TRU. What this entails is that as CARB staff drive around looking for illegally idling trucks, staff would also take down license plate and TRU identification numbers. From there, we performed desk audits to determine if these units were compliant. If a truck or TRU were determined to be potentially non-compliant, CARB would prepare to audit the fleet. This process can take time, but I do believe this allows us to be as thorough as possible investigating trucks in the community. Now, CARB has a specific strategy in the enforcement plan section of the CERT. In summary, this strategy states that CARB sees our portion of the enforcement plan as a living document and that we will update our strategies based upon input from the community. If diesel enforcement sweeps are something that you would like us to continue doing, then we will update our strategies to include this. In addition, CARB is committed to finding ways to work with other agencies. If another agency or even a community member submits TRU identification numbers and/or license plate information from heavy-duty diesel trucks, CARB staff will look into the compliance of these units. I know I can't share my screen right now. I was having trouble with that, but I'll put my contact information into the chat box.
And if an agency or a community member would like to cooperate with CARB in further enhancing enforcement, feel free to give me a call or send me an email. If the community member only speaks Spanish, I can have interpretation available. The previous time CARB performed a diesel enforcement sweep was in March of this year. We found no illegally idling vehicles and collected information on 37 heavy-duty vehicles, 3 TRUs, and 4 pieces of off-road equipment. From our investigations, we have found 1 potentially non-compliant truck and 1 non-compliant TRU. The non-compliant TRU has led to a larger investigation which involves a fleet-wide audit. I cannot discuss specifics about the case right now, but I will update the Community Steering Committee when I can. CARB will be back in Fresno before the end of the year, and I want to forfeit the rest of my time because I want to hear from you, the community, about where you think CARB staff should be looking for trucks in the community. And if you think expanding idling sweeps to include audits for other CARB regulations is the appropriate direction that we should be going in. If you do not have an opportunity to make a comment or suggestion in the next portion of the agenda, I want you to feel free to put your message in the chat box or contact me, and I will be sure to collect and share all your comments and feedback with the Diesel Enforcement Program staff. For those of you on the phone, my email is Justin, JUSTIN, .shields, SHIELDS, @arb.ca.gov. And my phone number is 916-229-0399. I want to thank you for giving me this time. And if you have any questions regarding CARB's presentation, I believe now is the time to ask.
Yes, thank you, Justin. Thank you, Jason. Justin, there are a few questions in the chat for you specifically, and we are seeing some people already writing in their comments about adding enforcement sweeps to the CERT. So there definitely are. If you would do us a favor, Justin, just to make sure that the committee has all the right questions and can answer them specifically, if you can write those 2 questions that you want answers from the committee into the chat, that would be helpful. And then I know that lots of questions went into Jason while he was talking. It looks like they are getting answered. Thank you, Jason and Ryan. Do we have any verbal questions or Spanish language questions about enforcement right now?
I actually have a question.
We do. Yes, we do. There was a Chevron shop on H Street near just south of Belmont that was burning something. Something that was in. It literally like it looked like a little rounded drill that looked like it had oil burning, and there was fumes, and it doubled the PM 2.5 when I went by there. The second thing, there was like kind of sulfur fumes on the construction area on Belmont. Like Belmont just Belmont east of the 99 freeway. And the third thing was that the burger and fry place just south of the park, of the Belmont Park on Belmont, and it was just completely unsafe levels. It was like into the hundreds of micrograms per meter cubed. PM 2.5. PM 2.5 was in the hundreds of micrograms per meter cubed. It just went up downwind of the place. There was some high areas near the 99 freeway, but I think it was the burger places and the fast food places that were contributing more.
So Laura, these are great questions and comments. Thank you for those. I'm going to allow Justin the chance to write his answers in, and we will report back to them during the public comment section. So thank you for that. And Justin, if you were able to keep track of those questions, we'll ask you to type those into the chat and I will read them as well. And then Justin, I do see lots of people dropping in the comments about no idling signs, definitely wanting that. And Justin has put in his contact information again into the chat. So thank you there. And then Lisa, will go to you and then our Spanish language line.
Okay. First off, I want to thank Jamie for giving me the readouts before, because it's very helpful for me to sit and read and to have questions, which I know is somewhat annoying, but I have lots of questions. But I'm not going to ask all the questions I had. I typed them in the box, but I did have one important thing I wanted to bring up. You guys.
Really quick question, Lisa. Is this a question about enforcement or the annual report?
It has to do with enforcement on
Okay.
page 12. I was reading it and I thought, well, let's do a little hybrid, little quick study. So I dialed the number at 1 o'clock this morning and left my name. Lisa, here's my phone number, call me back. What's the turnaround time for someone from whoever answers this phone number, this 800 number, to actually call somebody back? Because here it is, 7 o'clock, more than 12 hours later, almost day and a half later or whatever, and nobody's called me back. So what's the actual turnaround time?
So Lisa, I can answer. I mean, that's a unique situation. I don't know what happened. We've directed people, if you get a call at 1 o'clock, the expectation is you call back at 1:01. So, I mean, if that's not happening, that's an issue that we'll look
I
at.
I left a message at 1 o'clock this morning.
No, that's why I heard you,
okay.
you say. My expectation, though, is if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're responding. Now, yeah, so if that's not happening, you know, Jason's the compliance manager here in the central region. He will look into that and we will get back to you with a specific response as to why that didn't happen. But,
thanks for bringing that up, Lisa.
There's when it comes to complaints, that's something that we take pride in, that we are responsive. We respond to, you know, over 3,000 complaints a year. You know, we have GPS in our vehicles. We have systems set up where our on-call inspectors get the notifications directly to their cell phones so that there is no intermediary in that process. So yeah, I mean, if someone's not getting a timely response, feel free to let me know, because that to me is never acceptable.
Thanks, Ryan. And I think Lisa heard you loud and clear on that one. Can we hear from the Spanish language line? I want to make sure that you have a chance to check in. Anything for enforcement team of Justin or of Jason?
No questions or comments in the Spanish line.
Okay. Any more straggling enforcement questions before we talk about the annual report, which I know is super important to all of you? Any last chances?
I'd love to make a quick comment. Just verbally say that I am definitely for adding diesel enforcement sweeps to the SERP. It sounds like it was very effective the last time you guys were down here, and would vote for that to be included. I also think perhaps an MOU between the district, between CARB, and perhaps even the city of Fresno concerning mobile source enforcement could be really helpful in the SERP. It seems like all three agencies bring something different to the table. For instance, if this issue on Orange Street, where trucks are going down non-truck route roads, that sounds like a city of Fresno issue in terms of enforcement, but it could easily be reported to the air district because it's air pollution. And I think that there could be a lot more coordination between the three groups, and that an MOU could help formalize that. I know Nyameen runs an Ivan network where she helps create accountability among the agencies, and it would really be great if the agencies could mirror that to help address some of these issues community members are raising.
Yeah, so real quick, so in the SERP we have existing, there is an expectation that both the district and CARB continue to do idling sweeps over the next 5 years. That's not going to change. We're going to continue to, that is part of the SERP, and we're going to continue to do that and enforce that. On the collaboration, you know, I do want to talk about the interagency interactions. Anytime we get a complaint referred to us, if it's not within our jurisdiction, it's not a matter of telling people we don't enforce that. the expectation we outline with our staff is that we research it, we find out who the agency or you know, who that person can contact, call that up, you know, provide that information, get a name and a contact, and then call that person back and provide that to them. That's the expectation of the compliance staff here at the district, and because it is important not to just leave things unaddressed, or you know, that's where people get frustrated and confused, and you know, that's where the kind of the idea of government not caring about people stems from, and you know, we're definitely looking to change that perception. And yeah, so I mean, you have our commitment that we will always look to you know, find out who responsible agencies are, make contact for the person that was originally filing the complaint, and then getting back to them and providing that information.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, I look forward to hearing about what was done about the Orange Street issue at our next meeting.
Okay, we'll make a note of that.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to move on to the annual report conversation. Thank you so much for all the conversations we've had so far. There's a lot of activity in the chat, and I want to thank the translators, Denise and Mari. They're all going in and translating in Spanish as well. So know that that is going to be documented and flagged and answered, and we're going to make sure those all get answered today. So we're moving now on the agenda to the discussion of the annual report. And I want to follow up. This is based on the conversations we started last month. And the Air District does need to submit a report to CARB later this year. And this committee, I think you communicated many, many times that you want to be involved in this reporting process. And so this report's going to summarize all the progress you've made with implementing the CERP measures and encompassing this like 6 to 12 months of really hard work that this committee and the Air District have been doing since we began. So last month we asked you to think about this report as a summary of all of your hard work, all of your accomplishments, and just really be proud of what you've done together. But the Air District also said that they were going to give you a lot of time to look at it. Well, you've had about a month. And we really wanted to make sure that there was some time set aside today for you to give some very specific feedback that Jamie or the team can go in and actually handwrite in during this meeting. So that's what we want to spend a little bit of time on. A little less than we planned, but we had a good discussion. So I don't want to discount that, but I do want to say we've got about 10 to 15 minutes for us to have some hard conversations about the report, questions you have, comments you want to make sure are reflected. And as a reminder, this report was sent by email to you all at least once, and you probably got the physical copy as well. Anybody who requested it got it in English, and all our Spanish speakers got it in Spanish. So you don't have to have the report with you now, and if you do, great, but Jamie's going to pull it up on the screen, and I'm going to turn it over to her, and the goal of today's conversation is to get some feedback from you, general or specific, about that report, and we're going to do it in about 10 minutes.
Real quick question. When is the drop dead date for comments?
Drop dead date for comments is October 23rd.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Just as a reminder, I'm going to pull up my screen. If you go to the Ever So Much Fun South Central Fresno webpage, can you guys see my webpage, I assume? Down here in the lower right corner, there is a tab that says Annual Report. You have the big annual report. That's the one that you all now should have. We mailed out hard copies to everyone per Lisa's suggestion. So everyone either has an English hard copy or a Spanish hard copy. If you didn't get a hard copy in a language that you would like a hard copy in, give us an email, drop it in the chat, give me a call, we'll get that other language version out to you. I want to thank those people that have already commented. That's great. You can email any comments you have to us at AB617. And we are hoping to have all the comments incorporated into the document, changes made where necessary, edits cleaned up, typos fixed. Even comments, if it's maybe something that can't be acted upon, we still want to be able to include that the comment was made and then have a response to that comment. So any comments that you might have, please send them our way. Questions, we'd be happy to talk to you about the report in detail. If you click on it, it's got a lot in it. But if you, and I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but you can jump around. There's a bunch of tables in it. So when you get to the tables, they will basically show you exactly the strategies, what the number is and what pages they are in the SERP. Like short, 5 or 6 word description, then a bigger description, and then kind of what the status is. So, go through it, provide comment, questions. If there are things that you want to know more about, let me know. But we see this as almost an addendum to the SERP, part of that living document process that we talk so much about. So you will see that there are some things that are mentioned in this document that really do reflect some of the things that this committee has been discussing over the last 2 or 3 years. So with that, I'll open it back up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it back.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Jamie. It was a really quick overview. For those of you that have had a chance to just skim it, why don't I just get a comment from somebody that's already looked at it? Any general thoughts you want to share with the larger group about your perceptions of the report in general, not specific yet, just in general? How did you feel about it? What did you think? Does it speak to some of the work that's been done? Has anyone had a chance to look at it yet? Not to put anybody on the spot, but I know that it's a big report. Have you guys had a chance to look at it? Have you had a chance to skim it? Nayamin's nodding her head. She has. Good. Maybe through reactions, if you've had a chance to look at it and you feel like it's on the right track, give a thumbs up. If you've got any specific comments about, hey, can you remember to please make this adjustment or that adjustment, now's a great time to bring that up, just so that the team knows what to look for. Silence could be great. It could mean
I have
it's
Isabel
either you
on the
have
line.
Oh, great. Hi, Denise.
Hi, sorry.
Pues sí, hay algunas cosas que sí están bien, pero lo que pasa que nosotros, bueno, yo quisiera ver más las acciones, que se hagan las acciones que, pues que
Yes, I think that everything is fine. I think that we need more actions.
Action being done or action being reported about? Can you ask her?
Ajá, sí, que pues que se tuviera más el que sí se hagan las cosas como son, que podamos pues hacer lo que estamos pidiendo, nuestras peticiones, ¿verdad? Como nosotros queremos.
That things are done the way that we're asking, the way that we're petitioning them.
Can you say that one more time, Denise? It was a little garbled.
If everything can be done the way that we are asking, the way we petition them.
Okay, so I think what if I'm interpreting you correctly, is what she's saying is that you want to see things done a little bit differently, the way that the report was originally intended. Is that what you mean? Or the way the SERP was intended? And if anybody else is getting this in a way that I'm not, I'd love additional thoughts on it. I'm not quite understanding what Estella is saying, and I want to make sure we get it right because it's an important comment.
If I may say, I think what she's trying to say is that everything's fine, but she wants it done.
No lo he mirado.
I haven't seen the report. I think what she's trying to say is that everything's okay, but she wants things done the way they're asking for them, the way that you guys have promised. That I'm rewording her, so that way you understand better. I don't want to change her words, but I will explain a little bit better.
I appreciate that. No, that's helpful. So she hasn't read the report yet, but I think what is happening is she's been on these calls, the CSC committee meetings, and she feels like she wants to see action done through the committee. So the report is great, but she wants to see activity done, and specifically the CERT measures implemented and the promises kind of made that were, or kept that were made. So I think I hear that. It's separate from the report, but more generally about the committee itself and how we move forward as a committee. And there's a number of things I think that were specified both today and in previous meetings. And I think the Air District has said that they are actively working on them and will report back on them. And I see CARB has done the same thing, and the city. And so just keeping the foot on the gas there. And that's important to Estella, and we want to make sure that gets reflected in this meeting transcript as well. Any other report comments? I do see that Naomi has some comments she's going to email. Anybody can email comments on the report. Jamie has put in the chat that you can email ab617@valleyair.org. And if you do that by October 23rd, they can incorporate them and will incorporate them. To your point, I mean, it's a huge report. It's got a lot of really good information in it. To Estella's point, you guys still want to see additional things being done. And I think everyone on this Zoom call feels the same way. We want to get things done. We want this committee to feel like it's been productive, and it is productive. The report's a clear indication of that, but there's still more that needs to be done. And I think the Air District is hearing that and will see that as well. Eric is asking if the deadline for public comments is Friday. The deadline for the email report comments is Friday the 23rd, so a week from this Friday. And it can be emailed. That's the easiest way, but I've heard the district say they're willing to take phone calls if you want to talk through it with them, and they're also willing to take it in other formats. So you say what works for you in terms of how you get that feedback to them, and they will make sure it is incorporated in whatever way we see fit, and they are committed to doing that because we've heard that. Ivanka and Venice, I see your email or your hands are raised. Ivanka?
Yeah, I've submitted a letter to the Air District with a lot of the general concerns that we still have around resolution requirements that still aren't necessarily being met. And one of the things also is we know there's a part in there that says under 617, CARB must develop a statewide reporting system for criteria and toxic emissions of stationary sources. And then I also we've had this conversation about the awareness, to add to that, the awareness of the land use decisions that are being enacted by City Planning Commission and at a local air district level, being involved in that process and to respond to those plans that do not contain the goals of emission reductions. While there may be jurisdiction issues, I was explaining to Ryan earlier that it's one of the main reasons that we really do want to come back to and continue come back to the need for memorandum of understandings is because generally speaking, there's a disconnect between the city and the Air District, and thinking that the Air District has all air quality issues covered, done, sealed, do what they say, and that's it. And it's almost like we'll just put that responsibility onto the Air District, but it can't be only the Air District and this community. And so that is one of the main reasons we still need to see those MOUs.
Thanks for that reminder, Ivanka. And I saw Ryan nodding his head. If you have anything to add, Ryan, feel free to jump in. But I think he's agreeing with you, and I think recognition that it's not just the Air District and the CSC, but it's a full partnership with all those jurisdictions to get that done. Huge important point. Venice, anything to add to that? I know you had your hand up, and then I see Naomi as well.
Yeah, thank you. I know that there was an addendum that was added to the CERP that really was directed around public health issues. And I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity to beef up the public health section, because ultimately that's the real impact is, the health and well-being of the community. And so given the situation that we're in, given the concerns that people have about exposure, and given what predisposes people to, again, really poor outcomes, can we really beef up the public health section so that we're addressing, you know, asthma prevalence, that we're doing a better job of connecting this report, this effort, this monitoring to the health and well-being of the communities that are currently impacted. And then how do we improve the reporting aspect of all of the monitoring so that communities actually have an understanding of what's happening. And I'm just reminded of the fact that one of our community centers, apparently this has been going on for months, but the community's just been notified to some extent of a contamination source. And so I don't know that CARB is involved or engaged in any part of that, but it does just remind the community that there is this overwhelming history of toxic facilities being in our community, of them being built over, and then of the community being the one that is the most impacted with exposure and health assessment, health risks. And so for me, this all really comes back to health and wellness, and all of the work that's being done really, to me, needs to connect to how does this improve the health and well-being of the community. And so I would just appreciate beefing up that public health section to really address more thoroughly and more targetedly all of these issues and the way that they impact the health going forward.
That is an important comment. I'm going to let Jamie go off mute.
Yeah, definitely. We're actually thinking about how we can both better gather some of this public health data and then also better communicate it. But this is a priority, and actually is something that we're hearing in the Stockton community as well. I do know that CARB is thinking about doing some of the health connection parts of this as well, and it is a priority. And Venice, I've taken a note, and we're going to discuss internally how we can better do that for this annual report, because I know it's a priority.
Thank you.
And then Venice, I would take the liberty of saying that you have so much background in this, and if there are specific verbiage you want to share with the Air District, I'm sure they would be happy to take your expertise on some of those items and maybe help move that along if there's something you're willing to share in writing.
Sure.
And if Dr. Curry, you know, we'd be more than happy and would like an opportunity to maybe talk with you more about that section and see what can be done and get your thoughts on that in more detail if you have some time. I know it's a challenge.
After the election, I do. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, immediately though, infant mortality rate, maternal mortality, and then just the chronic lung disease. And those are the top line things that actually affect all the things that currently that I'm working on, but also just those are the top line health presentations that we're going to see.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm happy to talk more about it.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Dr. Curry. Naimeen, close us out, please.
Yeah, well, I have some comments regarding both the MOUs. I really think that is way overdue. We're how many months after the CERP was approved in February in chapter? And that was one of the main things we asked for. And we have not seen movement on that. So, and there's, you know, I have talked to staff who works for council members, just like the city was saying, well, talk to the council members. We're talking to the staff of the council members, and they have no clue where are the negotiations about the MOU. So I don't think, you know, I appreciate the staff coming to these meetings and representing the city, but at some point we need to make sure that this is taken to that next level, which is having those MOUs in place. And I remember that it said not only with the city, I think it said with all the other agencies that might have some, you know, overlap in terms of authority on this issue. So Fresno COG, for example, and others. So I definitely would like to see that next time that we meet, we have, if not, I mean, I understand that getting these political documents negotiated takes time, but at least that, you know, saying we have a meeting scheduled by this. And again, just like for all the other meetings that we have been asking to be part of, I would think, and at least I'm going to speak for myself, I wouldn't mind helping in any way advancing those, you know, discussions. in terms of the health, I completely agree with Dr. Curry, with Denise. Our take on health impacts was just adding a document describing the health impacts of air pollution. And that's not in any way assessing how much we're moving the needle to improve the health of community residents, but the strategies that we included in the SERP. So I would say some of this data is hard to measure, like mortality, all that, because all that data is like years behind. But what about, we have some in the steering committee, some health experts. We have the asthma collaborative. Why don't ask them to do some health assessments? Has the asthma rates, hospitalizations, admissions to the ER, even doing some simple lung functions that can be done, through their in-home visitation program AIM that they have, so that we can be able to say, after putting these filters in the schools, after putting electric buses, after doing X, Y, and Z, we can say that this percentage of kids in the AB 617 are breathing better and are having less health problems. And I think that's something that we should definitely add. I don't know if it's in this report or where, but we definitely need to pay attention to that. I know that Dr. Jonathan London, who conducted an evaluation of these, of AB 617 in all the communities, is working with Dr. Ricardo Cisneros, and I'm the community partner in that. And they're really talking about doing a health assessment. And I think that we need to take advantage of that and jump in. And I will just end by saying, I had asked also, what about moving forward the discussion on the other strategies? The vegetative barriers, yes, it was great to hear what Tree Fresno is doing, but I requested, why don't we have a subgroup on that? There's a deadline that is coming up this Friday for a Climate Corp program that the state will pay full-time fellows for 9 months to work on strategies like the ones that we incorporated into the SERP. So why are not we taking advantage of these things? So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Naimeen. And Jamie's got, I think she's taking furious notes on this item as it relates to the health impacts and the impacts that we want to be able to drop into the report. And then maybe if not this report, speak to future reports and the movement we've made on the 617 program to address those issues in certain communities. Okay, I see no more hands. I see lots of chats. I see lots of resources on health. And I want us to wrap up because we are at 7:32. So apologies for running long, but we got about 5 minutes and then we'll close out. As we move into the wrap up, I know that there are a couple of things here. It looks like everyone's already doing it. Thank you. Agenda items for future meetings. Naimeen just kicked us off beautifully here. We are looking for agenda items, and if we, have to take out some of the other things to make room for some of these requests, I'm sure the Air District will consider that. So feel free to drop in additional items you'd like to see at future meetings. And if there's deadlines associated with some of those things, please flag that as well. We always look for additional topics and want to make sure this reflects your priorities. We did lose DPR today, so we want to make sure to get them on a future agenda, and just know that we will go back to DPR for their update if that's a priority for this group. Stipend program is underway, and most of you should have gotten 2 checks if you've signed up at the very beginning, 1 check if you signed up in the last month. Please note that some of you are nearing your maximum amount of $600 before you will be cut off if you don't have a W-9 in. So I definitely want to make sure that if you haven't submitted your W-9, please do, so you can continue to get stipend payments above and beyond the $600 limit for the year. Questions about stipends, I'll stay on the line, and I'm happy to ask or answer those over the course of the next 15 or so minutes. All right. I hate to keep moving us forward, but I wanted to confirm public comments. Would you please, Heather, tell me if we have any public comments on the Facebook or on the email accounts?
We look good. Thank you.
And I know we did have a comment that came in during the enforcement section of this discussion. And I think Justin answered those questions in the chat. I'm going to try and find those questions and make sure that we get them maybe electronically to our member of the public that commented. So I do want to make sure that that's reflected without taking everyone's time on that. And then I did want to move us on, and just Kimberly, I want to thank you for being a co-host and give you a chance to say any final co-host remarks, and welcome additional co-host volunteers so that you can be a co-host in a future meeting. If you'd like to be, please put your name in the chat and we would love to have you join us, or raise your hand. And Kimberly, anything you'd like to say to close out the meeting?
Just thank you everyone for attending. It was a really good conversation back and forth, especially on the truck reroute updates. And I just want to urge the Air District to really think about the health and wellness component. This is something that this committee has been asking since the start of this this process with AB 617. So I just really hope that that's something that can get added into this report and future reports. And thank you again for allowing me to co-host.
Thank you for co-hosting, Kimberly. We really appreciate your contributions, and I think there are a lot of resources in the chat that we will document, make sure the Air District has, that reflect some of the health resources that are available from the academic community and others, to make sure that this is prioritized at the right time and in the right forum. And it looks like some of that is going to be addressed by the Air District in this report if possible. So thank you for those of you that have weighed in on that item, and I think it has been heard. Any last comments from anyone about anything before we close out this meeting, which was incredibly productive?
Erica, do we want to launch the poll on dates for the November meeting?
Yeah, that is our final item. We're going to launch the poll on the dates. Are you guys ready for that? Okay, I don't see any other hands. So this is what we promised, is that we need a new meeting date because Veterans Day is the Wednesday, which is the date of our next meeting in November. And so we need a new date. There are 4 poll options for you. Choose one only. And CSC members only vote, please. This is Thursday, November 5th at 5:30 to 7:30. Tuesday, November 10th from 5:30 to 7:30. If both dates work, click that button. If neither date works, click that button. So just pick one item only, and if you can let us know which date works for you, if one of those dates does, and the Air District will follow up with an email. We will also follow up with those of you who are on the phone and via email if you're not able to respond to this poll via Zoom. So it should be showing up on your screen right now. CSC members only, please vote for Thursday the 5th, Tuesday the 10th, or if both dates are good, click that, and if no dates are good there, click that. And Hannah will let us know when we're close.
Yes, about 40% have voted, but again, that's minus all other folks in the room. So let's wait.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. If I may say, Isabel said that those 2 dates do work for her, either or.
Oh,
on the phone line.
I'll put that in for her and submit it.
Thanks, Denise.
No problem.
If there are any others on the phone that wanted to comment, we're happy, that are CSC members, we're happy to drop your name in as well and put that in the chat log. But Hannah, what do you got?
Yeah, I think we have a majority of committee members voted. We have pretty good results.
So which date looks like most people are looking at either Tuesday the 10th or both dates. So that's pretty good. The Air District will follow up with even more detail, and it could be another doodle poll, but it could also be a date. So we will let them decide how best to approach that, and I appreciate that. City staff would be open to co-hosting at some point. Awesome. So we've got a lot of things in the chat. Put any last comments in the chat. Thank you for letting us go 10 minutes over. Thank you for the great conversation. Thank you for dropping in information in the chat and for being very candid with all of us. And we continue to refine as we go. And I think hear from you, and we understand priorities, and the Air District is trying to be as responsive as possible. So please continue to keep that, keep those comments coming. Last, I will say we'll stay on the line if anyone has questions. Otherwise, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Really appreciate today's meeting.
Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
Night.
Bye.
Thank you. Kim, I'll let you disconnect us.
You know,
Igualmente, gracias a todos.
it's horrible down here in